Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Austin Crime Report. This week, there's some significant things that have been going on, but will probably be a fairly quick rundown this time. Most notably, what's been going on lately is we've had a rash of homicides that have occurred all across the city. The latest ones, our 18th and our 19th homicide, was one that happened up around Mueller and involved a shooting up there. And we've gotten a lot of questions about this and the homicide rate in particular. No, it's been in the news a lot where people have been talking about we're about 4 ahead of where we were this time last year. And when it comes to our homicide rate, that it ebbs and flows a lot. Like, it's pretty rare for them to track the exact same numbers each month, year over year. And some of this is very difficult to understand or explain. Even oftentimes, we don't have an explanation as to why we have these sudden rashes of 2, 3, 4 homicides that may even occur in a weekend, or have quite a number of them that'll happen within a month compared to the previous month, or whatever the case may be. Any number of things could contribute to that. Sometimes we see when it does start to warm up, oddly enough, we start to see that people are out, they're more active, people start getting into confrontations, and they decide that they're going to resolve them using guns or knives or whatever, instead of either removing themselves from the situation or, just choosing other means by which to resolve our differences besides shooting at one another. So that's something that's been going on a lot lately, and it's top of mind for a lot of people. We're almost through April here, and we're at 19 homicides, I believe was the last one. And so we're about on pace with the records we've seen in recent years, where we've had around 60. That is an uptick. Since 2020, our homicide rate has effectively doubled with the number that happened within a year. We used to average about 30 to 40 homicides that would happen in a year, and now we're between 60 and 70. So that's not the trends that we want to see. Some of this is hard to explain. We've seen instances where certainly it's concerning that we see individuals that are committing these homicides. Some are repeat offenders. They have been out on bond. They have been released on bond. And that's a factor that we find very concerning. Those are things that we don't want to see. And part of it comes down to the prosecution mentality that we do have here, and the issues that we've constantly been pointing out related to a lack of prosecution or enforcing the law. Oftentimes, APD officers, they make arrests, they go out, they're doing great work, they are trying to keep our city safe, but we have to rely on prosecutors in order to follow through with the process. We have to rely on judges to issue appropriate bonds. And if they're not going to issue a bond that even we think may be appropriate, it's also the role of the prosecutors to go in and advocate for the victims as to why the individual should not be released. And a lot of times that just is not happening. And those are all things that can play into the factor as to why the homicide rate is up, as well as tied to our staffing. We do typically still get to these high priority calls as quickly as we possibly can, and that hasn't changed too much over the years. A lot of the other lower priority calls are the ones that are suffering from extended response times, but our high priorities, where someone is shot, someone has been stabbed, those are ones that officers still make every effort that we possibly can to get there as rapidly as we can, and have been maintaining fairly steady response times on those. But that leads into the other issue that's been coming up a lot in the last week or so, which is also a report that came out just recently about recruiting within the department. Currently, the department has just shy of about 1,500 officers that are working for the Austin Police Department, and we are authorized to have 1,816 officers, which means we're right at around 300 to 350 officers short still. But the things that I want to point out on that one is that is still down from the authorized positions of where we should be. Back closer to 2018 is when we were authorized just shy of 1,950 officers, and we had right around 1,900 in 2017 going into 2018. So we were almost fully staffed. But even then, in 2018 is when a report came out that said we should have between 2,200 and 2,300 officers for a city our size. For those of you that have paid attention, we've had, or been curious, we've had a report that came out from a group called Barry Dunn that was talked about in council, I believe, or in the public safety work session. And even some of those have said that we did need to have additional officers based on what is, even from what is currently authorized. So a recent audit came out and it talked about how since 20 to 2024, our vacancy rate has continued to grow, and there were some criticism related to the pipeline in recruiting, no long-term plan, and a variety of other things that it thought the department could be doing better. In talking with some of the other folks that have been curious about this issue, some of the things that I find very interesting is that the date range that they used for the vacancy rate was from 2020 to 2024, I believe. And that's starting right at the same time, because it referenced a single-digit vacancy rate, around 4% in 2020. But that's not an accurate representation of exactly what was going on, because that was also the same time period when we had 150 positions cut from the department. So just because they lowered the number of positions that we were authorized for doesn't really mean that the vacancy rate was down. This was amidst all the reimagining policing stuff and the riots that we were dealing with here. So a little bit of some skewed data there, it looks like. And then when it comes to us being able to recruit, the positive thing is tied to our attrition rate. And this goes directly into the effectiveness of a contract. We had been saying for quite a while that it was extremely important for us to be under a labor contract so that way we could retain people, because our attrition rate has been extremely high over the years. In particular, since 2018, we have lost more officers each year than we have gained. And that's not at all conducive to us being able to maintain the staffing numbers that we need to, or building them back up to where they should be. But since actually, once we started getting towards the tail end of our contract negotiations, latter part of 2024, is when we saw, when we were getting closer and closer to an agreement, that our attrition rate started going down. And now that we have been under a contract, our attrition rate has, in my opinion, it's plummeted. So we're losing far fewer officers. In 2023, we lost around 167 officers. Then in 2024, we lost around 95. And this year, through the middle part of the year, we're hovering at around 30 last time that I looked. So our attrition rate has gone dramatically down, which is exactly what we needed, and puts us on a much better pace to be able to recruit more people that are going to positively impact our staffing numbers, instead of having a net gain of 3 like we did last year, which is still a positive. That's the first positive year we've had in quite a while. Now we're looking at having, potentially 10 times that, that actually joined the department this year as a net positive increase in officers. So the contract has had an extremely powerful impact on our ability to recruit, but because we've only been under contract for about 6 months, it's had a limited time to work, because the other component to that relates to state law, civil service versus the contract. In short, the contract allows the department a lot greater flexibility than what state law does in order to be able to go recruit. But our recruiting unit has had to shift out from the old system to back under contract, and there's a little bit of a transition period that's going to happen with that. So some of the parts that I do agree with is they were talking about the need for a long-term plan. I definitely agree with that. It is good for the department, and they should be working towards a long-term plan that's identifying the goals, the metrics, how we're going to get there, and what we're going to use to measure our success. Those are all things that are good, and I do think we should see, but we're not taking into account a lot of the time even the environment that officers are being asked to come and police in. We have an extremely contentious political environment. I believe it's moving the right direction. It has definitely moved the right direction with city government, but there's still no denying that the impact that our district attorney and the county attorney have on our ability to recruit is significant, not just from officers becoming targets and officers being indicted, even when they act within their training and within policy and national standards, that creates enough fear. But then it's also extremely demoralizing when officers are out there doing the job and we see where that work is constantly thrown out the window and individuals are released, they're not prosecuted. So if you're someone looking to join this profession and you're looking at coming to Austin, you're like, oh, well, it looks like the department's doing great work, but yet their work is undermined and all this other kind of stuff is happening. People are like, well, it may be better for me to go somewhere else. So the political environment here is a factor that can deter people from coming. There's other things, a lot of things that are being worked on that the APA is trying to help with. We try to work with the department quite a bit to help boost recruiting efforts, to find alternative ways, some unique approaches, some unique partnerships, working with our other community partners to find new and inventive ways to bring more officers here, because we want to see our department grow. We want to see it succeed. We want to be able to provide better service, and we want to be able to get back to where we were, so that way we can keep our city as safe as we possibly can and get back to being the safest, biggest, large city in the country. So all things that are going on, are there always areas that recruiting can improve? Absolutely. But the way it's being painted, where most of it is on the department, I don't believe that that is a fair representation, because there's a lot more going on versus just what the department itself can control. So a little bit going on there with both of those. If you missed it, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that kind of stuff, because we just launched yesterday a podcast with Joell McNew, who is the president for Safe Horns. And we were talking a lot about safety in and around the UT campus, as well as what went on most recently with the individual wandering around a suit and a motorcycle helmet, Mr. Labidi, and lots of good info that came out there. So we definitely want to encourage you to go check out that episode. Please subscribe to our podcast, share them. That's a great way to help us get information out there, and we want to share things that are relevant to you. For our Wanted Wednesday individual, the person being highlighted this week is Michael Philip Haros. He's currently wanted for evading in a vehicle and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, what we would call UUMV, which is basically he's in a stolen car. So it's not uncommon at all for officers to come across a stolen vehicle and the individual chooses to flee. We get involved in a pursuit, and sometimes that it winds up being successful and we detain the individual. A lot of other times we wind up terminating, because that's the safest option for the community, and we will try to pick up the vehicle at a later time. But Michael Haros is 24 years old. He's 5'5", weighs about 125 pounds. And like I said, he's currently wanted for 2 felonies, evading in a vehicle and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. If you know his whereabouts, please contact APD or Austin Crime Stoppers. And as we always do, it's just a reminder that the Crime Stoppers offer a $1,000 reward for information that could lead to an arrest. And then lastly, we want to highlight our Employee of the Week. This is a patrol officer with the Henry 800s, which works South Central Austin, and it's Officer Espinoza. It's a night shift officer, but there was an incident that happened where a family was driving on Highway 71 when they were struck by a drunk driver. Fortunately, it wasn't head-on, even though that's the way they were being approached. They got clipped on the back end, but they had to get a tow truck. The vehicle had to be towed. Very stressful situation for the family, and they had a small child with them, and they reached out to the department and said they were extremely grateful for Officer Espinoza, because he helped them with their child. He helped them get their stuff moved. He took great care of them, lots of patience, great time. Ultimately, the driver who hit them was arrested for driving while intoxicated. Again, unfortunately, that's something that is not uncommon here. We see a lot of these accidents that happen, but another great example of our night shift officers in particular taking the extra time, helping people out, making sure that families are taken care of. And in this particular instance, the small child was a 4-month-old, and so he helped them get through everything, and they were extremely grateful and reached out. So shout out to Officer Espinoza for all your fine work. Great work out there on night shift, and the officers that were involved in stopping the driver and ultimately arresting him for DWI to get a drunk driver off the road. That is all that we've got for this week for you. We appreciate you. As always, please go like, subscribe, join us all the myriad different ways that you can follow the Austin Police Association, trying to get good information out to you. We appreciate you, our community, everyone that's here supporting APD, wanting to learn more. And until next time, stay safe, stay alert, and stay tuned.